Now you can definitely see that the creature has an eye. You can see the shape of its head. I don't know whether that's an ear or not, but there's the shape of the head. Now we're starting to get somewhere. What does this particular creature look like? So I started to identify some of the areas and saying, well, what is it? Let's look at it more closely.
Please support this channel by subscribing and leaving comments.
Okay, now, one thing I'm going to promise you, not too many fuzzy pictures. I hate fuzzy pictures. I like it nice and clean. Some time ago, I sort of sat down after looking at many, many fuzzy pictures and decided I wanted to more or less know what a Sasquatch looked like, what Bigfoot looked like. And there are many, many artist conceptions. So I started looking at a lot of things. And we often refer to Bigfoot as having human-like characteristics. And there have been a lot of people in history that have had their human with ape-like characteristics. It could go the other way. So I started looking at various people in history. How do I turn this on, Daddy? Oh, yes. There we are. That had ape-like characteristics, and some of the other creatures that have been discovered or that have been reported. We talked about one yesterday, the one in Russia, Carpathian, the doctor, etc. Anyway, here are some pictures of various ape-like creatures now, or people with ape-like characteristics, or real ape-like creatures. This is the Carpathian creature that was in Russia, discovered by the doctor. And the doctor, unfortunately, didn't take pictures. He says that the creature was shot afterwards. It was, apparently the story goes that the guards saw this creature coming onto their area, and they thought maybe it was a saboteur, so they arrested it, grabbed it, put it in a cold shed or whatever, called the doctor in. The doctor examined it and said, yes, it was a real wild man. And one thing he noted that John didn't mention yesterday, he said that the creature had a lot of lice on it that were not the type of lice that are on human beings. There were different types of lice. Okay? I'm going to blow up some of these. This is Julia Pastrana, 1860s. That's when she died. She was born about 1832. Julia Pastrana. I'm going to blow it up and give you a better shot of that. I'm just going to introduce these right now. I got another better one here too. This is Crail. Crail, a little Siamese girl who was more or less, they figured, had animal characteristics. This is the Minnesota Iceman, which was examined by two doctors, Sanderson and Halberman, declared to be real. Assumably it was found in a block of ice. Now there's a lot of evidence now that time has passed to indicate it was probably a hoax, but it fooled two full-bore 100% scientists who went to their graves. I think they're both dead now, I believe, yes. Saying, number one. The other one's not. One is, right? Still saying that the creature that they examined, this is their drawing, there's actual photographs of it in the block of ice, but you can't sort of get anything out of them. They're kind of, really fuzzy. Saying that this particular creature was real. This was a real creature. A fellow by the name of Henson said he shot it. First of all, he said he found it in a block of ice, or a freighter in Siberia, or near the coast of Siberia, saw it floating in a block of ice, and then somehow or another it ended up in China, and then it ended up in America. And then later on, he said that that wasn't the case, that he'd actually been in Minnesota, and he saw this thing in the field, and he shot it, right? But he didn't want to say that because he thought he would get arrested. Anyway, it was a big chunk of ice, and it was exhibited in Chicago in 1968, and that's when the two scientists saw it. One of them worked for the Smithsonian Institution. They went and asked this guy, Hansen, if they could examine it. He said yes. They went and examined it. They declared it to be real. Then the Smithsonian Institution said they wanted it, and it disappeared. And then in its place, there was a fake one, which he was now exhibiting. And he said the original disappeared. Now, the original has never been found. So that's the Minnesota Iceman. This is Jojo the dog-faced boy, who came to New York in the 1880s. He got kind of mixed up with Jacko. You know the story of Jacko, who was the little ape-like creature that was apparently captured in Yale about 1884, the same year that this little fellow, Jojo the dog-faced boy, was exhibited in New York with the Barnum and Bailey Circus. Somehow those two got mixed up. Some people think it may have been the same creature. This, down at the bottom here, okay, these are two brothers, the Gomez brothers. They are aerial acrobats in a circus. Trapeze artists. The Gomez brothers, who have acute hypertrichosis, which is hair all over the body. Now, they had quite a documentary on these on TV the other night. Some anthropologists, some scientists, not all, some, think that this condition that they have is sort of like a redundant gene. Human beings used to be covered in hair like this. But as time went on, that gene shut off because we didn't need all that hair, right? But every now and then it manifests itself, and people... I don't really need the microphone. You can turn it off. Turn it off. I don't need it. Okay. That people every now and then are born covered in hair. So that gives you a little bit of an introduction. And I looked at all of these different photographs and looked at the different features on all these people in order to come to some conclusion as to what perhaps a Bigfoot might look like. Half human being, half ape, or whatever the situation is. This is Julia Pastrana in full glory. Now, Julia is very close. She, according to the history books, she was apparently examined by Darwin himself. And Darwin concluded, now this is according to the history books, and I don't want to get any arguments on it, that she had the double palate, or the teeth were in the same configuration as those with the primate, the ape family. Human beings have a continuous row of teeth. However, apes don't. They have like two rows. It's called a double row, and the teeth are like that rather than like that. And they said that she had that characteristic. Plus, she was completely covered in hair. Completely covered in hair. And she had the big brow, the bone structure above her eyes, very deep-set eyes. As a matter of fact, I was so impressed with Julia, I did a little bit of enhancing, because in those days they didn't have color photographs, and I'm a little bit of an artist. And so I took her photograph and blew it up, and that's probably a good idea of what she kind of looked like in color. She was pretty intense, very large eyes, and that's what stuck out on her most. Now, Julia died at age 29. However, she had a baby by her manager. In those days, what you did is you married your special people to keep them with you, because they made you a lot of money. Nowadays, of course, you can't display special people anymore. There's a law against it. However, in those days, you could do it. And unfortunately, in those days, they made a lot of money. Now they can't be displayed, and a lot of them aren't doing anything. However, that's a different story. But Julia had a baby by her manager. He married her. And when she had the baby, it was exactly the same as her. She had hoped that it would be a normal child. When the baby was born, it was like a miniature Julia Pastrana. So she died about 4 or 5 hours after the child was born, and the child died a few hours after that. The manager had them both stuffed like mummies, and he again distributed them throughout Europe and throughout the United States. Now, it was okay in those days. It was okay. At the end of the last century, you could do anything you wanted to. And he went all over Europe and all over U.S. displaying these two mummies. Now, they ended up somewhere, I think somewhere, if anybody's got any idea, I'd love to see it, somewhere, I think in Wisconsin, I don't know, somebody's got it. Somebody's got Julia Pastrana and the little baby. This is an interesting photograph. It's now of Creo, little Siamese girl. Now, Creo was born in 1877, and she lived to 1926. And she was a 6-year-old Siamese girl. And she was very intelligent. She ended up spoken several different languages. But there she is with one of the circus managers. And she had very unusual prehensile abilities. She could pick things up with her toes, her hands, and she could actually do things with her lips that we normally can't do with our lips as human beings. She had a mane, what they call a virtual mane, that came right down her back, and she was covered in hair. And she looked like a little monkey girl. And she was exhibited throughout the United States for quite a number of years. She made an awful lot of money. She was a very intelligent little girl. She lived, I think, till she was, I think it's 49, do that correctly, age 49, and she spoke several languages. However, she had characteristics that were peculiar to the ape family. Now we also have Deloy's man beast. Now I know there's been so much written about this thing, and there are so many different accounts. First of all, I'll just put up the Deloy, the other one I'll show in a minute. Deloy's man beast, and this was an expedition by a fellow by the name of Deloy who went down to South America, and whatever, two creatures attacked his camp. Two large ape-like creatures which were about over 5 feet tall. And of course he came back and he told everybody, he took one photograph, but he lost the rest of his photographs in a boating accident. But before they shot one of the creatures and the other one went back in the woods. And he took pictures of it. He sat it on a crate, a fuel crate, and propped it up with a stick. You can see the stick propping its neck, and took pictures of it. Took a whole bunch of other pictures too. However, they were lost. He went back to England and said, hey, there's some kind of an unusual 5-foot-like ape, human-like creature wandering around in South America, and he showed them the pictures. Of course, nobody would believe him because they said, there's no such thing, right? He told them that the creature was over 5 feet tall, and it took them months before somebody said, well, what kind of a crate did you sit him on? And he said, fuel crate. So then one of the very intelligent men said, look, if he's sitting on one of those regular fuel crates, we can measure the fuel crate that's right in the plane. If the creature is sitting on it, you can use that to determine how big the creature is, right? You just do a ratio. I'm going to show you something about that later. So they did, and they found out that, yes, that creature sitting on that crate is over 5 feet tall. And there's no such thing as a monkey that big wandering around in South America. So it goes down in the history books as was it or wasn't it or what. They say now perhaps it was some very large spider monkey. Now I can't get over the next report that I read. Another book, assumed to be written by a professional, right? I'm not going to get into that. But if you look at that creature, he says in his book that the two creatures attacked the camp, a male and a female. The male got away and they shot the female. He says that's a female. Now, I'm not an anthropologist, but that doesn't look like a female to me, right? In black and white. And he shows a picture. He says, that's the female. Kind of unusual. The next picture down below here, this is Basso. He's probably still living. He lives in Morocco. And nobody knows where he came from. He's been living out in the bush. Don't know how old he is. Don't know when he was born. Don't know anything about him except that he has, again, ape-like teeth. He has the bony structure on his head. He lives in the wilds on berries and fruit and things like that. He doesn't wear any clothes. Exists in the trees. There's superstitions surrounding him. The men can get him to come in to take this photograph. This is in 1976. This photograph was taken. They get him to come in and they dress him up in a sackcloth kind of thing. He doesn't wear any clothes. And they took that picture. However, those that have done some preliminary examinations say that he lives just like an ape. And he climbs in the trees, eats insects and fruit, and whatever he can find out in the bush. Apparently does quite well. Okay, those are some examples of some of the different ideas of different types of ape people. Here are some more, just to sort of round this up a little bit before I show you what I believe the Sasquatch looked like. Okay, there's a regular gorilla that lived in, I think it was Chicago, and he died, I know, in the 50s, Bushman. He was 6 feet tall, and he weighed about 600 pounds, so that was a big gorilla. And that's a real orangutan, old man of the woods. Looks pretty good, pretty human-like. This was Roger Patterson's idea of what the creature looked like, what he put on his book. That was before he saw the creature. This I'm going to show you a little bit more later, but this is from the Patterson-Gimlin film, and I'm going to get into blowing that up and showing you what we can do there. And that's a proposed Gigantopithecus. That's what a Gigantopithecus is supposed to have looked like. Recently, you may have seen in, or not recently, a few years ago, this was making around this particular photograph, which was drawn or painted by John Bianchi. And it was in Pacific Northwest magazine. And I think it was a very good artist's conception of what the creature looked like. So I had a copy made of it, and there it is there. That's pretty good. We've got the head, we've got the bony structure, we've got the nose and the chin and the whole thing, and it's beginning to come together, I believe, quite nicely. Okay. I had a look at the Patterson-Gimlin film very closely and started working on the frames to determine what this particular creature looked like, assuming that the Patterson-Gimlin film does show, in fact, a Bigfoot. So one of the frames is the side view of the creature's head. I wanted to see about the nose, I wanted to see about the mouth, and I wanted to see about the shape of the head and all that other stuff. Now, this gets a little fuzzy, but let me explain it to you. There's the head coming up like that. There's the eye, there's the nose, and it's a long distance here, and then there's the mouth, and then the chin kind of goes in. That's right off the film. So that's kind of the profile. That's a profile of the creature in the Patterson-Gimlin film. Okay? Now we can work a little bit further from there. We can go to frame 352, and if we take frame 352 and blow it up about 50,000 times, this is what we get. Now you can definitely see that the creature has an eye. You can see the shape of it. I don't know whether that's an ear or not, but there's the shape of the head. Now we're starting to get somewhere. What does this particular creature look like? So I started to identify some of the areas and saying, well, what is it? Let's look at it more closely. And I identified them and said, okay, first of all, we have a possible ear over here, right? Because I'm going to do some enhancing on this. I got to know what parts of this thing are what parts. And I said, okay, I definitely have an eye here. I can see it's got a pupil in it. I can see an eye here. I definitely have a nose, though it's not too clear. And there's something that appears to be a mouth. As a matter of fact, I see a little red in there. It might even be a tongue. And I can see a little cheek sticking out here. It's got its head like this, and it's apparently puffing out one of its cheeks. You can sort of see a puff. So that's right off. That's an actual copy of the creature's head, now blown up about 200,000 times from the Patterson-Gimlin film. Now, something else you can do. Here you really only have one side of the face, don't you? Okay? So if you've only got one side of your face, you can get a reasonable idea what the other side of your face looks like if you do a mirror image. You know, both sides of your face are totally different. So if you take that, cut in half, you end up with something weird, but it gives you a little more insight. You get that. Right? Now, if you can use your imagination a little bit, you can cut this down in here, can't you? You can cut that off there, and you can put the head with a point. Use your imagination, right? The eyes, of course, are not looking, they're looking in the wrong spot. There should be a pupil here and a pupil here. They should be looking straight ahead. So you have to change that configuration, but use your imagination because you have now started to come together with a picture, right? So then you work on it a little bit more and you start drawing in some stuff, right? Now this is not your finished product. It's sort of, you're getting there. You have to enhance some of this stuff. So you start enhancing the eye a little bit. You have to put a little bit of black in there, and you have to type up the pupil, and you have to start shading this out. You have to start saying, well, you know, there's something strange on the creature's face here, some kind of a lump it has. And you have to start putting that together in order to come up with a sort of a composite picture. Then you have to do a comparison as to where you are and how you have got there kind of thing. And you do that, right? You say, okay, there's the real thing over here, and that's the eye, so I've enhanced the eye, right? Here's the nose coming. I can see the nostril here, almost, right? So I'll make a nostril there. I can see the shape of the nose. I can see this mouth in here. I can see its lips, and I can almost measure the thickness of its lips. And I can see this lump here. So I'm starting to get kind of a composite picture of what this creature may look like. Now, there are a whole bunch of steps in between that, right? So, but I'm not going to present them here. There's too many. But if you put that all together, now I did one thing. I closed the creature's mouth. It didn't look right. Open, right? So I closed the mouth. So you take the original 352, blown up so many thousand times, do a little artwork on it, you start comparing to get that, and then you have to do the left-hand side, and you try to make that as best you can on the right-hand side, and what you end up with is something like this. I showed it to DeHinden after I finished it, and he said, well, it's probably the closest he's ever seen, although he does disagree with me that the creature has such a pronounced chin. doesn't seem to think the chin is that pronounced. However, when I put them both together, I seem to find that this thing has got a chin. Appears to me as though it has got a chin. Renee thinks maybe the chin goes down a little bit more, but generally speaking, that's probably quite close. Now, that was done directly on the film frames, right? Directly on the film frames. Okay, I'm going to do this next bit here, which talks about the height. And actually, I'm not too big on video and all of this stuff, because this is a lot of stuff, so I'm going to ask no videos from here on in, okay? A lot of controversy on how big the Sasquatch is. If in fact it's over 7 feet tall, then that gives a lot of credibility to the fact that it was not a hoax, because they would have had to have found somebody 7 feet tall and taken them to Bluff Creek and paraded them on the sandbar, right? That would have been tough. Like getting a 7'3" person into Bluff Creek would have been tough. However, we really don't. What we can do is we can do some analysis on the film itself, and we can determine how big the creature is. Now, this is probably the most clear way of doing it. We have the casts from the film site, and we have to assume that those casts are made from footprints that this creature left. And given we have that, and we agree to that, and those prints were 14.5 inches long, or thereabouts, right? Now you have a frame like this, which is frame 323, which shows you the foot in the same plane as the body because it's on the side. You can't do it if it's at the back. You can't do it because the foot's too close to the camera. In this case, it's on the side, so the foot is primarily in the same plane as the body. Now if you measure that foot and say, okay, it's 14.5 inches, and you measure it, you work a ratio out, and then you take from where that foot would just about hit the ground, right about here, right? That foot was to come down. You can almost see the heel on this one in here, right? So where that foot would come down, and you work out the same ratio, and you go right up to here, you got 7 feet, right? And it's over 7 feet. 7 feet something. Now don't forget the creature's bending over a little bit, not much, because this leg is straight, this left leg, it's like this. So you haven't got this big bent over. You can't add 6 inches to that. You can add 2 or 3. This analysis shows that the creature is over 7 feet. When we've really done hardcore analysis, we said, okay, 7 feet, 3.5 inches, and I believe that that's almost exact. And the reason I believe that is because if you take this frame, a different frame, which is the first frame, the creature, when it goes into the well, it doesn't go into the woods, it walks beside the woods, right? If you take this frame, now, there's one thing wrong with this frame. To use this foot here, the foot that you see sticking out, as the basis to work out the ratio, it won't work because it's too close to the camera. You have to put 2 manufacturing in there. However, if you look at this picture very, very closely, you'll see that under the branch that the creature is stepping over, you can see its other foot. You can see the heel of its left foot here. Now, in order for the creature to have all its weight on its left foot, then he must be in the center of gravity. You cannot stand with your left foot out here and put all your weight on it. It's got to be directly in line with your body. So you can use that heel to form a ratio to determine how tall the creature is. You cannot use this foot because it's too close to the camera. If you use that foot, it comes out the creature's only about 5 feet tall because the foot is too big, too close to the camera. It's over 2.5 feet, too close to the camera. You know how they fool around with photographs, hold your hand up like this, it makes your hand really big. The closer it is to the camera, the bigger it is. It has to be in the plane, the plane of whatever it is that you are measuring in order to use it. Now the heel is in the plane. It has to be because the creature's standing on it. If you measure that heel, it's 4 inches on the cast, so it's damn close, right? You have to kind of measure it a bit. You use 4 inches, and you determine, okay, well, there's the ground level. I can see the top of its head is kind of bending over. So you can go to the middle of the back and you go up there. Not totally scientific, but damn close, right? And then measure the difference on both those lines. Work out the ratio. You get 87.48 inches. Pretty close to 87.5 inches that Byrne determined by using another model at the film site and going through a lot of different trouble. That, I believe, and the other one, and the other photograph that I showed you, definitely show you that that creature was over 7 feet tall. Now, whatever it was, even if it was a hoax, then it was a hoax that was 7 feet tall. Okay? I don't care what it was in that film. It was over 7 feet tall. I don't care if it had rubber feet or whatever. 7 feet tall. So they got a basketball in there. If it's a hoax, somebody went in. Somebody mentioned yesterday, I'm just going to sign off with this little one, just for interest's sake only, right? I want to talk about Ohio a little bit. And I've just put together a book with Jody Cook that Jody mentioned yesterday, entitled Bigfoot in Ohio. And he sent me an awful lot of stuff, and I've been working with them for a long time. Go back a couple of years. Did articles for some magazines, etc. However, Jody and his friend George Clapperson have gone up into the different areas of Ohio. Now, you can't say the wilds of Ohio. Yeah, there is quite a bit of bush there, but there's also a lot of rural areas, farmlands, with bits of bush here and there. And most of the sightings in Ohio are not up there in the Wayne National Forest. They're at those farms that skirt those areas, right? And this creature appears to be coming out, according to the many, many reports that I've put together. There's over 100 of them in here. Farmers, wives, rural people, right? Something near the kitchen, the chicken coop, something near the barn, big footprints near the barn, right? Out plowing the fields. Ohio is very rural. 75% of it's farmland and of course, wilderness. So it's all rural area. Not so much wilderness like we have here. Anyway, in their excursions up into the various areas, they discovered these, what Jason termed as the Bigfoot nest, and that's what they look like. Okay? Pay your attention to the bottom there. See? That's what a Bigfoot nest looks like. Now, it's a bunch of big branches covered in smaller branches and then covered in hair. And it's hollow on the inside. And they crawled in there and he said, okay, it stunk, it smelled naturally. And they found some hair, right? And they did send the hair in. But actually, there's a lot of snow in Ohio. It gets very cold there. If that structure were covered in snow, that would be a very, very comfortable structure. You could live inside there. It would be very warm. It's quite large. Now, they found 4 of these things. Now, after Jody had taken this photograph, he sent it to me, and he phoned me one day, and he says, you know, I was looking at that photograph that I sent you. He says, there's something strange in the background. Now, here we go. Okay, my only fuzzy one, right? So I said, okay, fine. So back in here, he said, look there, right, and I have all sorts of equipment. So I looked back here and I said, yes, it looks to me as though there are 3 unusual creatures in the background of that photograph. Now, a lot of people don't believe this, but I can see them, right? I'm as bad as these other guys. Anyway. Anyway, if you look very closely, what convinced me is when I blew it up about, I don't know how many thousand times, I could see a hand. I could see this looks like a child. Now, maybe it was 3 neighbors and a dog out walking, right? I don't know. But there's definitely something in the background. And this looks to me like a child, right? He's got his hand up like this. And this is a woman, like an Appalachian woman. I can see her eyes, I can see her head, I can see her hair, I can see her nose, I can even see her lips, right? If you look really closely, and this is something else. I don't know what. I did some enhancing on it, and that's the way it comes out, okay? Now, I'm convinced that there was something in the background of that photo. I don't know what it was, but definitely something was looking at Jody Cook and George Clapperson when they were examining the Bigfoot nest in Ohio, of which they found 4, which are all similar. Now, there's all sorts of other things that have come to light since they found these nests, and all sorts of speculation and getting involved with UFOs and all these other things, right? Because there's a lot of UFO connection and Bigfoot connection in Ohio.
Could you put that one back on for just a second and point out to us again where you're seeing the image?
Of course, yeah. It's very clear.
You have to pay from Ohio to see it.
right in here. Right, see there?
What is the distance from the trees to the nest?
Oh, I know I did. I've never been up there.
I have a hard time.
If you get a magnifying glass,
They
you look at it, you
notice.
see something. Now, I whether or not it's there, now, I can see a hand, I can
Where
see
does it
it.
look?
Okay, I'll
Between
enhance
the trees
it,
there?
right?
No.
As I say, it could be neighbors out for a walk, but it appears that if you just stand here, you can see
Oh,
it, you
okay.
know, there's something
Okay.
there. Now, okay, there you are. Was there, wasn't there?
Who's the person in the photographs?
That's George Clapperson.
And George was not aware of anything?
No, and Jody took the picture. He was standing over here, took the picture, and then after the picture was developed, same as, it seems to happen in Ohio all the time, right? After the picture was developed, he sent me the picture, and I looked at it. I didn't see anything, right? And then he phoned me and said, you know, that picture's something strange. We're looking at with a magnifying glass, and look under the tree. And I said, okay. Got my magnifying glass out, looked under the tree, and lo and behold, I said, yeah, there's something there. I'll enhance it. So I went in and did a little enhancing. Now, it appears to me that there was something there. I don't know. I make no speculation as to what it was, but I believe, yeah, the hand is too clear. You can actually see fingers on the hand. But some of us see things that others don't. I know that. Right? Anyway, there we are. That's Portrait of a Sasquatch, to try and show you a little bit about what I think, in particular, perhaps, a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot looks like, based on the information other people or other creatures and the Patterson-Gimlin film. Any questions? Yeah.
The creature from South America, the monkey, or what they said was they thought was a monkey. Have there been any other reports of that type of creature over the last 50 or 60 years?
I believe there have, but I haven't got into it. You know, they call it the man beast, but they now say it was some kind of giant spider monkey. That's the latest on it. And I think there has been other reports in that area, but I don't have any specific knowledge on it.
One more question. The 4 shelters they found,
Yes.
were they close together?
No, they were all over the state. They're all over the state. This one was near Akron, in kind of an area that had been used. It's kind of a junkyard. It's overgrown because half of Akron's kind of been used, and now it's going back to, it's laid dormant, and then it's being reused, like for mining. It's sort of gone and come. And this was in a wooded area that is basically out here. It's kind of a junkyard. They dumped a bunch of stuff, and there's a whole bunch of junk around there too. But it's long grass. And they went around and they talked to people in the area, and they said, well, what builds that thing? And they referred to this word grassman, okay, which we of course included encounters with the grassman, because that appears to be whatever the creature is in Ohio. Now they talked to a number of people, right, and this term came up. They also talked to a man who was in his 70s or 80s, who referred to it as when he was a little boy, 10 years old. His people used to come into the county and he said they were looking for the grass man. So the term appears to be quite old. Now some people said that there's a lot of grass in Ohio. Like you see all this long grass. And some people have said to them, well, there had been reports of seeing these funny little creatures, little ones, they call it, the children of the species, they had seen running through the long grass. Now, that's what people in Ohio say. Possibility? I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of amazing, though. I mean, the structure cannot be just made by the wind. It's too well made. Somebody said possibly raccoons, because raccoons make that. I said, well, you got to have pretty big raccoons. Right? Yeah. Pretty big raccoons for that. And they said, well, maybe there was a clearing, government clearing in here. But it's private land. So what's the government doing on private land, right? And how did you get big sticks, small sticks, grass, right? And then hollow out on the inside. And they found hairs in there. So there's something unusual. Whether it was a Bigfoot or not, I don't know. Something unusual made those structures.
Chris,
yes.
I know you weren't there and didn't have anything to do with it, but man, when we were kids, we built crap like that all the time.
Sure. Possibility.
And I wasn't there to look at it, but I'm just saying that.
Yeah, I covered that one off. I mentioned that.
Let's see the hairs. Where are the hairs? I haven't seen. Nobody showed the hairs to anybody.
Possibility it could have been, but I don't remember building structures like that when I was a kid. I didn't build structures like that. I built lean-tos. I covered that, right? Yeah. I used to build lean-tos. What you would do, you never started off in the middle of a field like that. You always started off near a tree. And you put branches on the tree and you stuck stuff on it. Yeah. You didn't do this. I made lots of forts when I was a kid. And I didn't do that. Oh, I checked on this. I said, okay, is this a particular type of fort that is something the kids in Ohio build? Right? They are different. We realized when we said, do they build different things back there? And so we asked that question. We couldn't find any kids that actually, well, maybe you did, right? Yeah. But not like that. Lean-to type. Yes. Yeah, sorry.
Well, you could have cleared that land. You could have raked it up, piled it up, and then animals or kids could have gotten in and hollowed it out.
He was there 2 months before. Same location. It wasn't there. And there was no Terry Crews. Okay? Yeah. This was taken in January. He was in exactly the same location 2 months before. He went right through this. They go up in there all the time. There's been sightings in the area. There's a family that lives down here. named Atkins, or I think it was a vicious name, but they lived near here, and they had reported to them that they had heard, seen strange things, and that's what prompted these guys to go and start looking around down here, right? So they went down there once, and then they went down, and the second time they found this thing.
So what do you think?
I don't know. Something built it, right? I'm not going to commit myself.
That snow right there beside it?
Sorry? That's snow, yeah. January, snow. In January they went down. They'd been down 2 or 3 months before, and he says it wasn't there. And he found 4 others, 3 others, 4 altogether. I don't know, I can just say that, you know, you report what you can, and then you take what's left kind of thing, eh?
Would a Sasquatch build that in the middle of an open field? You know, I mean,
Yeah. Okay,
Any further question
just
right there?
one clarification on that, okay? I'm going to say this, okay? Birthing complex, okay? I'm not even going to touch it.
Don't mention it even.
Back to your ratios and measurements,
Yeah.
have you, when determining the height, have you taken that further to determine width of the shoulder
Yeah.
and the other body measurements? Do you have any of that information?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's also, so as long as you've got something that's in the plane of the body and you've got the dimensions, you can do it. I mean, yes, it's very big. I think the waist is somewhere around 68 inches, and I got the bicep about 35 inches, and I have listed around, I think it's around 18 inches, okay? So you're looking at a pretty big creature, right? And that's based on the size of the foot. Now, you have to say, okay, the foot is the foot, right? That cast was from that creature, right? We also have other things that we can use. However, that seems to be the best way to do it. Okay, well, before I go, Dan, I wanted to say something here. May I continue 1 minute? Dan's been giving away an awful lot of stuff here, and we really appreciate the great job that he is doing for this conference, and a great MC, keeping us all on our heels and really moving ahead. So I have a little gift for you, Danny. I know you want one of these, and there you, as a matter of fact, you're even in there somewhere, okay? A copy of Bigfoot in the News for you. Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
I'll be reading this tonight. Great. And I'll get it autographed too. Time for a break, 15 minutes, and we'll be right back.
If you're enjoying all this rare and unique content, please show your support by subscribing and leaving comments.